Now I want to watch his meeting with Germany, just because I think these are funny to watch. So if you don't know, Germany has a new chancellor, Friedrich Merz, ahead of the CDU, barely has a two-party majority. Germany obviously going through some real economic struggles right now. There's many reasons, one of them being competition out of China. But the main issue of this meeting is likely to be about Ukraine, where I think Merz's goal is to get Trump back on board with supporting Ukraine. That's the goal, I think, of this meeting. If I had to sum it up, there's a lot of things, but that's the main one. Again, Germany has begun spending more on its military. In fact, I think that is covered here, which is always a good sign. Germany is boosting its military by up to 60,000 troops. This is news from today, as part of a broader push for Europe to militarize, given that they can no longer rely on the United States umbrella, and the United States is pulling back from NATO and European defense in general. Germany is leading the charge on European militarization. And so that's where we find ourselves in the context of this meeting. So let's see how it goes.
We owe the Americans a lot. We will never forget about that. And so with your German provenance, I think this is a very good basis for close cooperation between America and Germany. So again, thank you. Thank you for the hospitality, and thank you for having your guest house for a night.
He said thank you 10 times in the first minute and a half, just to get it out of the way.
Would you have any questions, please?
Mr. President, on your new travel ban, why now? And if the Boulder attack was part of your reason?
This is why I hate these press conferences, is that they don't ask anything about U.S.-German relations. And so it ends up with the leader of the other country just sitting there quietly while Trump answers questions about bullshit for 40, 50 minutes. There has to be something about this. It is so shitty. And Trump will never not take the bait. He will never be like, can we talk about, he will always jump on it and weave for Canada to go with that. I mean, Carney didn't do anything wrong in the Canada meeting, but it's not like they did great. Nothing happened. He barely spoke. It was like an hour of him talking to Carney, and they spoke for like 10 minutes of that, and 50 minutes of it was Trump answering questions. The camera didn't even look at Carney. It cut him out of the frame. It was just a Trump press conference.
You put out on Truth Social a post regarding your conversation with President Xi.
Right.
Can you talk about whether or not you feel that trade talks, trade relations are back on track after appearing to be a little bit off track last week?
A little bit off track. It was only the complexity. It's pretty complex stuff. We had a very good conversation with President Xi a little while ago, just before your...
How many times am I going to hear about him having good conversations with President Xi? How many times? There's no trade deal with China. It's not happening. We will never get a favorable trade deal. We keep talking about how you're talking and you like him and it's worked. It's not happening. And the most we're going to get are like symbolic concessions.
The agreement was we're going to have Scott and Howard and Jameson will be going and meeting with their top people.
So the great agreement you've realized is that you're going to send the same three people who are bungling Japan right now to go to China and bungle it there. That is the big call with Xi Jinping, is that you've landed on who you're going to send to start the talks, who, by the way, cannot get a deal done with our closest ally, let alone our biggest geostrategic rival.
Are you willing to put more pressure on Putin to end the war by imposing new sanctions on Russia
Ukraine
and
question?
also China?
Well, remember, I'm the one that ended Nord Stream 2, going to a place called Germany, come to think of it. I'm sorry I did that. I don't know. But
is he implying that he blew up Nord Stream 2? This happened during Biden's administration. He wasn't president. And by the way, while I think Biden may have had something to do with it, it is the official position of the United States. They had nothing to do with it. So did Trump personally army crawl out there and blow it up? What is he saying? I actually don't understand. And by the way, saying that in front of the country whose sovereign pipeline was blown up is also stupid. Is he telling Merz that, hey, we blew your shit up? What is he saying? I don't understand, dude.
What do you expect from Germany and what do you expect from the Chancellor?
First of all, just Finally, a good question. I'm sorry, but thank you. Thank you, ma'am, whoever you are, for at least asking one question relevant to the two people you're standing in front of. I do appreciate that. It is relevant.
Well, first of all, I'm glad to meet because I've been dealing with the chancellor, and he's a very good man to deal with. He's difficult, I would say. Can I say that? It's a positive.
Go ahead.
You wouldn't want me to say you're easy, right?
No.
This dog gets around, dude. The second Elon's bed's cold. Now you're jumping in with someone else, dude. What the hell? No wonder Elon crashed out today. He saw this and got jealous.
Is Germany doing enough on defense, Mr. President? Is Germany doing enough on defense?
What?
Defense spending.
Is Germany doing enough on defense?
The chancellor wants to.
Is Germany doing
The
enough?
chancellor wants to spend 3.5.
Well, I don't know. I mean, I haven't discussed it very much. I know that you're spending more money on defense now, and quite a bit more money, and that's a positive
Definitely.
thing. I'm not sure that General MacArthur would have said it's positive, you know. He wouldn't like it, but I sort of think it's good. You understand what I mean by that?
Absolutely, I understand.
He made a statement, never let Germany rearm.
This is so fucking crazy because we make this joke on stream. Oh, Germany's remilitarizing. Whoa, watch out. That's always bad in history. And it's funny. And we get it. It's a meme. But for the president to make it in front of a sovereign nation who he has consistently asked to spend more on the military for a decade now, for 10 years, Trump has been screaming at Germany to spend more money on the military, and now they're doing it.
Mr. President.
Mr. President, will you leave your troops in Germany? And if I may ask a question to the Chancellor to answer in German for the German audience, how has your first encounter been?
The answer is yes. We'll talk about that. But if they'd like to have them there,
So you're not gonna
we have a lot of them, about 45,000. It's a lot of troops. It's a city when you think of
More
it.
than that.
That's good economic development. They're highly paid troops, and they spend a lot of money in Germany. But the relationship with Germany.
We do have a lot of troops, and we have bases in Germany. And that's where I grew up. I grew up on a military base in Germany, a NATO base, actually. Yeah, I'd like to hear Mertz's answer. But, you know, realistically, if Germany is going to militarize more, then they're going to want U.S. troops out. Of course. If they're not under the U.S. security umbrella. And by the way, it's like extremely expensive for the U.S. to do this for no real reason.
May I say a few words in German to
Yes,
the German
please.
public? So, danke für die Frage. Wir sind hier im Weißen Haus und ich bedanke mich
What a
beim
beautiful
Präsidenten
language,
für den sehr
folks.
freundlichen Empfang.
It just flows off the
Mr.
tongue.
President.
Do you speak English because you speak such good English? Is it as good as your German, would you say? Do you feel, no, do you
No,
feel
it's not
more
my mother
comfortable?
tongue. No, it's not my mother tongue, but I try to understand almost everything and
Yeah, very
to
good.
speak as good as I can.
Very good. You know, it's,
Mr. President, you've made
it's an achievement.
It's one of the dumbest questions I've ever heard in my life. Sorry, I feel like this is too mean. Like, it's not that big a deal, but that's such a dumb fucking question to ask a native German.
Thank you, Mr. President. The criticism that I've seen, and I'm sure you've seen, regarding Elon Musk and your big, beautiful bill, what's
Oh,
your reaction to that? Do you think it in any way hurts passage in the Senate, which, of course, what is you're seeking?
Well, look, you know, I've always liked Elon, and it's always very surprised. You saw the words he had for me, the words of, and he hasn't said anything about me that's bad. I'd rather have him criticize me than the bill, because the bill.
Shouldn't have said that. Shouldn't have said that, bro, because he did, and it got way worse.
When you look at what we're doing for small businesses, for people, for middle-income people, all of the things that we're
What about people who make more than $980,000 a year? What about that? You're not really going to mention that, but that's the biggest beneficiary of these tax cuts. Aiden Calvin and the Yard Boys are getting a tax cut. Okay? Is that what we want? We want people that work one day a week and get 50 grand get a tax cut? No.
Yes, sir. So what we've seen is we keep hearing from the CBO
Scott.
that there's going to be a large deficit from the bill, which we disagree with, but using the CBO scoring, they came out and scored the tariff revenue. We think it'll be the minimum of $2.8 trillion over the 10-year window, which actually puts the bill in surplus if you include the tariff revenue, which they won't do.
The tariffs are not a component of the bill. They're scoring the bill on whether the bill individually is good or bad for the deficit. The bill spends more than it cuts. So individually, the bill is horrendous. Now, if you say separately, we're going to make a bunch of money from tariffs and make up that gap, maybe. I don't think so. So far, no. No. But like, of course, they're going to score the bill based on what's in the bill. Every conversation about this bill is so dishonest. It is just everything you ripped into Biden for on steroids in terms of like not caring about fiscal sanity. There's just no other way to put it. If the same bill was under Biden, you would be saying all the things that I'm saying right now. It doesn't add up. It's just borrowing a ton more money, and we already are having trouble doing the auctions for the borrowing we're doing now.
But now energy is way down, and they have states where you're at $1.98 a gallon for gasoline.
And just
so the costs have come way down.
What do you think, Chancellor of Germany?
And
someone described it as this, but it really is. These song and dance meetings, the other chair is the political cuck chair. They just make another world leader sit there and watch while Trump does his campaign rally speeches to reporters for an hour. It's not a conversation. They barely get to speak. I've seen a couple of these now. They don't get to talk. Can you imagine? I was trying to imagine, like, if Donald Trump goes to China to meet with Xi Jinping and they have a press conference. And Trump is sitting there in a chair silently while Xi Jinping answers questions from reporters in Chinese for an hour and a half. Just talking shit, man. And talking about, saying things about how shit America is or whatever. And just like it's like, can you imagine how it's so obvious from that POV how insane and disrespectful it is and how that's not the point of what this should be. And we're just doing it week in, week out to our allies. It's crazy. It's crazy.
You were very critical of Vladimir Putin a couple of days ago. What kind of play is he playing from your perspective? What are his...
Well, look, he got hit. He's been doing hitting, so I understand it.
This kid aged poorly. I'm going to say something, though. I've been reading a lot about the Ukraine stuff, trying to keep up. So if you guys don't know, we talked about it with the Ukraine did an incredible drone attack deep behind Russian lines that took out a lot of their bombers, including part of their nuclear bombers. Then the next day, they blew up a key bridge in Russia. And Russia has downplayed these attacks, but also said they're going to retaliate. Unless they are going to escalate to nuclear war, my understanding, from as much research as I can do, there's not like some secret extra gear they can go to. There's not like some lever they can pull they haven't pulled outside of nuclear weapons. It's mostly an empty threat because the methods they've had to try and gain territory or ground don't exist. You say more people to the meat grinder, but like they've already thrown many people into the meat grinder. It's just interesting. I think it seems more empty of a threat than anything. I don't know how they can. You said this before? Okay, well, yeah. I want to clarify that. That's where I'm standing. We'll see what happens. I'm sure they're gonna do something, or announce something, or I don't know. But I don't see what gear they have.
I used to talk to him about Ukraine a lot. It was the apple of his eye, but he would have never done what he did. I think mistakes were made by him, but I think mistakes were made by other people. The president should have never allowed that war.
I know it's only been 130 days, 120 days. How many days it's been since this fucking presidency? But man, I'm getting more and more of a sinking feeling that he's going to be talking like this up until the last day of his term. He's going to be talking about what would have happened, woulda, coulda, shoulda, and how this never would have happened if I had just been. That's something you can say during an election. And if you want to say it at the beginning of your term to be like, hey, listen, I'm inheriting a big problem. But it's becoming more and more obvious he's just not going to stop. He's not going to stop saying this until the very last day. He's going to keep saying, well, yeah, I couldn't solve this problem, but I never would have had it under Biden. And
Biden should have never allowed that war to happen. If you had the right guy in here, that war would have never happened. Israel would have never happened with Hamas. The attack on Israel would have never happened because Iran was broke. They had no money. They had no money to give to Hamas or Hezbollah or anybody else. And all of that would have never happened. Inflation wouldn't have happened. It was caused mostly by energy. And the Biden administration messed up my great energy policy. We were down into the 190.
The switch, too, would be $50 if Biden had been president. I know it's happening right now, but your girlfriend wouldn't have broken up with you. You would still be together. The baddie you let slip through your fingers, she would still be here. If Biden hadn't been, if Joe Biden, okay? Luka and LeBron would be in the finals right now. Harambe would be alive.
And it would have Chancellor with Russia would never have happened with Ukraine. It was something that would have, I dealt with Putin a lot. There was no chance, zero. And a lot of people say, how do you know?
His face, dude. The challenge, the strain he is under. How do I get what I want out of this meeting without... He's almost fallen asleep, bro. He hasn't spoken in fucking 30 minutes.
And I can tell you, just speaking for the Chancellor, because we speak about it, he feels the same way. He wants to see it ended. Would you like to say something?
Absolutely. And I'm here, Mr. President, to talk with you later on how we could contribute to that goal. And we all are looking for measures and for instruments to bring this terrible war to an end. And may I remind you that we are having June 6th tomorrow. This is D-Day anniversary, when the Americans once ended a war in Europe. And I think this is in your hand in specific, in ours.
That was not a pleasant day for you?
No, that was not a pleasant...
This was not a great
in
day.
the long run, Mr. President, this...
Dude, I fucking hate it. I fucking hate it. Dude, he's trying so hard to be diplomatic. What you're saying, by the way, with that joke is calling him a Nazi, that he is part of the German Nazi party. That's a pleasant day for him. It is a pleasant day for anyone in Germany who's not pro-Nazi, because it meant their country eventually got freed from Hitler.
America is again in a very strong position to do something on this war and ending this war. So let's talk about what we can do jointly, and we are ready to.
But first, 10 more questions for Trump.
That we gave support to Ukraine, and that we are looking for more pressure on Russia. The European Union did, and we should talk about that.
We will talk about it, and
Yeah.
it's good timing. The numbers for our country are through the roof, the economic numbers.
Just ignores what he says. Just Mertz finally gets to talk for more than one sentence. Trump cracks a joke in the middle, gets shut down, and then ignores it. Then just moves on. And you talk about how great our numbers are.
6 months ago, we were having a hard time getting anybody to join our military. I mean, they just couldn't do it. The numbers were record low. We couldn't get people to join the military. It wasn't me. This was before I got there, the past administration. But 6 months ago, a year ago, the numbers were record low. You couldn't get them to join. That included the police. And you couldn't get them to join. Now, we just hit the highest number in the history of our country, we think, but very close.
I don't know if this is true or not, but if so, that is like the biggest recession indicator I've ever heard. People don't join the military en masse unless they are out of options. That's like what they did in 2009, dude. That is a sign that poor people are totally out of options.
But the highest in the history of our country, recruitment, joining the Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines, Coast Guard, police forces all over the country.
What did you do for that? What was the reason?
Spirit. They love our country again, you know?
Counter that, Mertz. You dipshit. Spirit. Aura. You ever heard of it? It was just aura.
Go ahead.
Mr. President, so would you consider to put more sanctions on Russia? Because this discussion is going on now for weeks and months, and you tweeted about it once, but then...
When I see the moment where it's not going to stop, and I'm sure you're going to do the same thing, will be very, very, very tough. And it could be on both countries, to be honest. You know, it takes two to tango. But we're going to be very...
Sorry, what? You're going to sanction Ukraine for not ending... It takes one to tango in this particular war. Russia could stop this war. Ukraine cannot.
But sometimes you see two young children fighting like crazy. They hate each other, and they're fighting in a park. And you try and pull them apart. They don't want to be pulled. Sometimes you're better off letting them fight for a while and then pulling them apart. And I gave that analogy to Putin yesterday. I said, President, maybe you're going to have to keep fighting and suffering a lot, because both sides are suffering, before you pull them apart, before they're able to be pulled apart. But it's a pretty known analogy. You have two kids, they fight. Sometimes you let them fight for a little while. You see it in hockey. You see it in sports. The referees let them go for a couple of seconds.
I don't even know how to approach that. That's a crazy thing. That's a crazy thing for a sitting U.S. president to say about a war. Can you imagine FDR saying that about World War II or something? You gotta let them fight for a while. You gotta let. But also, like, even if I were to take it at face value, they've been fighting for a while. Do you think the Ukraine war it's been a couple of seconds? They've been fighting. Millions are dead. You said that earlier in this conversation.
Any question for the Chancellor?
Continue.
Go ahead for the Chancellor.
That would be one.
I like his answers much better.
Well, first, would you continue to support Ukraine?
Yeah, I'm with Ukraine. We just signed a big deal
What a shit question.
rare earth with Ukraine, and I want to. You know what? I'm for stopping killing. Really, that's what I'm for. Again, a war that would have never started, should have never started. I want to see the killing stop. We spent $350.
Didn't he say the next question should be for the Chancellor and pointed to him and said, I'd like to hear his answers? And then he jumped on the first answers, and now Mertz is still sitting there silently while Trump monologues about the same things he already said in this conversation. He talks about how he's for stopping killing, even though minutes ago he said, we got to let them fight it out. They're like two kids. They're like two kids in a hockey game, and sometimes the refs don't pull them off right away. Am I just finding a couple cracks in the logic from the conversation that I'm watching live?
Do you agree with the analogy the president made on the war between Russia and Ukraine as being a fight between two kids?
Oh, shit.
Is that how you view that as well? And what do you actually want the US president to do in this?
Well, I think we both agree on this war and how terrible this war is going on. And
I can save. He passed the quick time event, dude. He passed the quick time event. I think what we agree on is that death is bad.
We get satellite pictures of the warfield, and you don't even like to look at them, right?
It's terrible.
So
it's really
bodies, arms, heads.
Yeah, it's fine. Why would you like to look at it? Of course.
Legs all over the place. You've never seen anything like it. It's so ridiculous.
And this is only by Russian weapons against Ukraine. This had never happened with Ukraine weapons against Russia. Never. Ukraine is only targeting military targets, not civilians, not private, not energy infrastructure. So this is the difference, and that's the reason why we are trying to do more on Russia, how to stop this war.
Well, in this case, I'm talking about the battlefield, the soldiers on soldiers. But you could also say that, too, with the cities. The cities are being hit also. So it's a terrible, terrible thing. Somebody said autopen. Did I hear the word autopen?
I'm just curious.
Because I think it's the biggest scam.
Talking about the mangled bodies in the Ukraine. Did someone say autopen? I think I heard autopen. I just heard autopen.
And I could give you the name of some of the people that use the autopen because I'm here and I ask questions about people that were here also. There are a lot of people that were here when that happened and they're here right now. These were radical left lunatics that used that and they didn't get elected. He didn't get elected either, actually. Thank you very much, everybody.
What a fucking note to end on. Dude, Mertz said so little in that. God, that's a masterclass, folks. Honestly, now that I've seen it all, I'm proud to have that as my president. It's just frustrating to me because I think anyone who watches that full through can agree, like, man, he looks pretty stupid. Like, I think anyone could do that. And then people call me biased, dude. Oh, it's crazy. I think that's crazy. You know, it's not about whether you agree with different values or principles or something. You're like, it needs to be more important that we get a handle on immigration or whatever. You can't. I'm just talking about watching that video and being like, is this guy one of the smart people you've heard talk in your life or one of the dumb ones? Do you know what I'm saying? Like, you can watch a fucking talk right now from somebody more intelligent and be like, this guy's clearly in charge of what they're saying. Or you can watch it. It's not, I don't know. It's not like it's hidden. It's right in front of our face.